This has been a love story about two lonely people who found each other in the Twilight Zone.
I got chills, they're multiplying, and I'm losing control, 'cause the power you're supplying, it's electrifying. You better shape up, 'cause I need a man, and my heart is set on you. You better shape up, better understand. To my heart I must be true. You're the one that I want. Ooh, the one that I want. Ooh, the one that I want. Ooh, the one I need. Oh, yes, indeed.
This is Mark Jeacoma, and you are listening to That Twilighty Show About That Zone. If you don't listen to tonight's episode, in which we discuss the Obsolete Man, and 2, you are obsolete, stay tuned. Go to bed!
So this is rare that we have 2 Stone Cold classics in The Obsolete Man, starring our old friend Burgess Meredith, the second season finale of Twilight Zone, and then we wrap it up tonight with 2, which is the 3rd season premiere of the Twilight Zone with Charles Bronson and Elizabeth Montgomery.
Pops.
And I couldn't finish this season with only the 1 episode because there were only 29 produced, so we had an odd number and decided to kick off the 3rd season for this final episode. And I'm very happy to be joined by Mark Jeacoma, who
Hello.
stepped in and saved my ass for the episodes Mr. Dingle, the Strong and Static. That was the favorite. This is the job, so I assigned him 2, in my opinion, gold standard episodes. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. I'm really... Well, we are going to be taking a very long break after this, so it won't be a while again.
Phew. I mean, these are like 25 minutes each.
Yes. It was a very, very long season for me as well. This podcast can be quite strenuous, and if you can hear my daughter screaming in the background, she agrees. Once I figured out I had fans they send me very lovely messages, and so
Really?
I just got a couple yesterday. Just
Well, I
telling
just
me
want to say, it doesn't surprise me that you're fans. It's just
Thank you.
no, I like your show.
Yeah, I like that thing you do with the thing and the guy.
the Twilighty thing.
Yeah.
No, it's just with my podcasts, I don't get such nice letters.
No, nobody says anything.
Oh, we
Good
do
show.
from time to time, but
I want to have
I
your
get a lot of
babies.
hate. I get a lot of hate mail.
A lot of hate mail.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm happy to have you on the show, not only because you gave me the initiative to not only start podcasting, Mr. Jeacoma, but that you also opened our 2nd season with King 9 Will Not Return and The Man in the Bottle. So here we are at the end of this season, and we start with The Obsolete Man.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here. It's not too often that people allow me onto their podcasts. Keep in mind, I've been doing podcasting since probably late 2006.
Right, since I was in diapers, yeah.
Yes, you were. Well, I'm still in diapers. So I've got you beat.
For different reasons.
It's about 10 years now that I've been doing, a podcast of some sort or another.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this isn't the history of Mark Jeacoma, but it was Alex who got me involved in in the early stages of podcasting. Where we launched Fistful of Cables, and we really got into that.
Yeah,
but it's no more.
I would like to know where some of those are because they disappeared.
I have them all, so if you ever want them. They're coming back, actually. Well, I'm going to repost them all.
I want to see
like
more,
80 of them or something.
Well, I want some kind of an archive where we can access Foo Yuck and For Your Consideration and Fistful of Cables and there was another one.
Well, there's a lot more, but there's one that I'm actually missing. One whole show, which I'm very upset about. It's called Hot Biscuit. Where my very good friend Michael Pate and I reviewed a few albums. Mm-hmm. And we did, I think, a kick-ass job. But again, this isn't the Mark Jeacoma show.
This is the Dave Lawler Show, and welcome. We start with The Obsolete Man, written by Serling, directed by Elliot Silverstein, starring Burgess Meredith and Fritz Weaver. I'm going to start off right now. This is a heavy-handed episode. You have this stark, expressionistic lighting scheme. I
loved it.
We're in a courtroom. There's some court of final judgment where Burgess is being tried or sentenced to death for the crime of being obsolete. The definition of which is no longer in use or no longer useful. So I don't know how they come to that conclusion other than that he leads an insular existence in a furnished room, reading books, reading the Bible, and he really doesn't seem to be bothering anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is a crime in this alternate universe. This is obviously a totalitarian regime, and the uniforms resemble those worn by Nazis and other types of fascist leaderships.
But I definitely enjoyed this particular episode. I never saw this episode, actually.
It's rather famous. You never saw it?
No. I never saw either one of these episodes. I don't know what happened. I don't know why these are lost episodes to me.
These were always running in circulation in reruns on TV all the time. These were there were some that they never showed. Mm-hmm. And then they would show these constantly.
But I love the set when they're basically judging him, Romney Wordsworth.
It's beautiful, beautifully shot, incredibly shot.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. This looks like something you would see in a Nazi propaganda film or something, like Triumph of the Will or something like that.
It's a very clean print. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I love when you go to his room and it's covered in books.
Right. Yeah.
You are a librarian.
I'm told you've had counsel and been given orientation, Mr. Wordsworth, but I'm still not sure in my own mind that you understand the purpose of this hearing. The field investigators in your sector have classified you as obsolete. This finding carries with it serious implications. Do you understand that, Mr. Wordsworth? Now I ask you again, your occupation?
I am a librarian, sir. That is my occupation. That is my profession.
A librarian, having to do with books.
Yes, sir. Books.
Since there are no more books, Mr. Wordsworth, there are no more libraries. And of course it follows that there is very little call for the services of a librarian. Case in point, a minister. A minister would tell us that his function is that of preaching the word of God. And of course it follows that since the state has proven that there is no God, that would make the function of a minister somewhat academic as well.
There is a God.
Well, Fritz Weaver appears as this kind of godlike figure to the defiant Burgess Meredith. He sentences Burgess to death, but this is strange and illogical for me. He's given a choice as to how he will die, and the issue of choice seems out of place for this level of government. Why give him a choice? We ultimately know why, but why give him the choice in the first place,
Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange. I love the idea of it being aired on television.
Yeah, that's it's creepy and prescient in a way, because this is how I think television will evolve in the next 50 years. He picks his form of punishment, which is that he wants to die in his room with his Bible in his hand. But part of his sentence involves entertaining Fritz. So there's a bomb somewhere in this room that will go off at midnight. The door is locked, so Fritz can't get out until he begs to be let out. And eventually he does. He cries out to God to save him. Burgess relents, lets him out at the last moment, and dies in the explosion. And then Fritz, because of this was televised on TV, is now sentenced to death for the crime of being obsolete. So what do we learn, Mark?
We learned that it's better to have died than to have lived.
Well,
No, I don't know. There was really no lesson learned here because he'll have died and his message will not have carried on.
well, yes, okay. I think what you were meaning to say.
You mean the big scheme of things? What did we learn?
Well, it's tough because there's not much to learn except for the preachy monologue that Serling has.
Well, here's the thing. We can learn something, or do you mean what did that world learn? Because with Twilight Zone, I always feel as though the lesson is learned internally in the Twilight Zone.
Right, okay.
And what did they learn? Nothing.
Well, maybe they learned that
Eventually
they'll all be rendered obsolete.
Yeah.
If this guy was.
Sure.
But I think the point you're trying to make is that you would rather die on your feet than live on your knees.
Yeah.
There you go. All right.
What kind of idiocy is this, Mr. Wordsworth? You've locked the door.
Oh, yes, I've locked the door. Now, question. How does a man react to the knowledge that he's going to be blown to bits within a half an hour? Answer, that depends on the individual. So for myself, I'm going to sit down and read my Bible. It's been hidden here for over 20 years. It's a crime punishable by death. But still, it's the only possession that I have that has any value at all to me. So I'm going to just sit down and read it until the moment of my death. How will you spend your last moments, Chancellor?
Please let me out just so you can be punished. Come on.
Yeah. This is what I think. Okay, I struck a chord of controversy in the Twilight Zone group at Facebook when I shared my belief that the episode was simply written as an indictment or an attack on communism as a governing body. Other people believed it was a rebuke of fascist government, and then I retorted that fascism is more of a concept, it's an idea than a system of government.
Sure.
J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI had files on Rod Serling, and I believe the FBI investigated him because he was a Jew, and Jewish people were suspected of having communist sympathies because I suspect Central European ancestry and assimilation into different societies, which was one of the reasons for the undercurrent of anti-Semitism in Hollywood and the entertainment industry, which is something I do want to talk to you about at some point. This should be a podcast separate from this. But this is why so many Jewish actors and producers changed their names when they got into the industry. They thought being identified as Jewish would be a detriment to their careers. And this lasted all the way up until the end of the 80s. And then in the 90s, you started to see more of this multicultural mix of actors and producers. So I think the script was a message to the FBI basically saying, I'm on your side, don't blacklist me. You know, this was the end of the official blacklist, 62, 63. The unofficial blacklist continued until the mid-70s. So the idea of fascism can be put into practice in any government, whether it's communism or capitalism. That's how I saw it.
No, I think you made an excellent point. Rod Serling has always been a bit of a rabble-rouser, a quiet rabble-rouser, but nonetheless somebody who was always, kind of against the grain of things. I could see him, kind of putting... He definitely had a lot of messages in all of his... films, even a lot of Twilight Zones might be a little heavy-handed with it, but it all has to do with normal moralities and what year did this come out? In 61. So I could
61.
see this being kind of, a little bit of a message coming across. I can also look at it being overly interpreted as one.
Right.
I wonder at the time what people were saying about it.
Well, I always considered it a trigger in a way. I hate to use that word, but the enemy of the episode seems to be atheism. And I say this as an atheist. I mean, notice all of Fritz his attacks on the Bible. This is like, it's kind of a mistake for people who haven't actually read the Bible. It's a book of disturbing contradictions. It's beautiful prose, particularly the passage that he reads from the Psalms. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. But it's also a book about totalitarianism, fascism, rape, murder, incest, cruelty, sadism, even in the New Testament. So
even a UFO sighting.
Yeah, he was. I guess, and dinosaurs too. But the performances were exceptional. It's a very well made episode. Fritz Weaver and Burgess Meredith, and they were just brilliant in this episode. But there's a mixed morality. I think the message is a little bit muddled because the Bible is not this book of peace or anything like that. It's a book of war. It's a book of hatred. It's a book of,
stories,
slavery, racism, crazy floods, things like that.
Right. Lessons to be learned.
Lessons to be learned, yes.
Right,
but what do you think about the idea? Not to go off on a tangent, but what do you think about the idea about the undercurrent of anti-Semitism in Hollywood?
I mean, there was definitely a period of time where, like you said, everybody was changing their last name. I think in general, when you released a movie and it was, directed by, Aaron Abramowitz or something.
Yeah.
The general consensus of this country was Jew, and they weren't willing to accept the movie totally. So the big movie companies, they're not going to put the money behind something like that. They need a name.
Yeah, you need to change your name to John Smith or
right,
Tony Randall or Gene Wilder or something like that.
Right, and even Gene, the name Gene, his name was Eugene, but Eugene is a very Jewish name. It's
like I mentioned, Tony Randall, Gene Simmons,
yeah.
Charles Bronson. In the next episode, we're going to talk about his
Houdini.
real name was Charles Buczynski, I believe.
But even Harry Houdini,
Harry Houdini, his real name was Morris Seidelbaum.
That was Eric Weiss. But, I believe that there was definitely a leaning against the Jews from pre-war and post-war.
And J. Edgar Hoover was, by everything I've read, a classic Jew hater.
Yeah.
A lot of resentment. I think there was a lot of resentment around after World War II.
Well, I think that's where his hatred of Hollywood came from, is his hatred for the Jewish people.
Yeah, probably. I would say that because the war required a lot of soldiers, American soldiers, to lose their lives in service of saving Jews, it's possible that the mass exodus out of Central Europe into the United States and other places, they weren't particularly welcome. They were hated by the Russians, they were hated by the Germans, and they were hated by the Polish. So they were hated by many different groups. Right.
Nobody ever accepted the Jews in. There was never a place for us. That's why we fight so hard for Israel.
Yeah. Well, it's not just that I support Israel too. I absolutely do. And I'm as Irish as they come.
These days things are a little bit different. But, when you...
Yeah, there's a lot more acceptance.
But, at the same time, you don't want to really go flying to Dubai with your yarmulke.
No, definitely not. So that does it for the second season of Twilight Zone. And now it's time to move on to the third season premiere, 2, with Charles Bronson and Elizabeth Montgomery. For some reason, Montgomery gets top billing over Bronson, even though Bronson is pretty much the star. She must have had the better agent. I
didn't realize that it was Charles Bronson until a few minutes in. I really didn't recognize him.
Well, yeah, he doesn't have that little mustache.
A mustache.
Yeah.
But she looks great as a brunette. I don't know.
She's incredibly beautiful. I love her. Bewitched is one of my favorite shows growing up. I loved it.
She passed away very young, 62.
Yeah, I know. She had some, was it cancer?
I'm not really sure.
Some kind of a heart disease or something like that. Yeah.
She really is. You see it in this movie. She's a genuine beauty, and it's a real, But as a brunette, wow.
Well, what do you prefer, the brunette or the blonde?
A brunette, 100%.
Really? Okay.
In general, I'm going to lean towards brunettes in life, but you get a nice sultry brunette.
I go back and forth on this because if you look good as a blonde, then great. But she looks good, with both hair colors. She just looks wonderful.
Yeah, especially in the black and white. This particular movie, this particular episode, is beautifully filmed. Mm-hmm. I don't know why it looks so good, but it just seems like the contrast is kicked up a bit. There's a graininess to it that I really enjoy. Everything about this particular episode I really liked, except for the strange pacing. The pacing I felt was inconsistent.
Well, this was the end of the black and white era. This was 1961, and television was switching over. The TV shows were switching over to color about 1964, 1965. So by this point, they had like artists just working on these shows. So they had a very good cinematographer, and that's, you see this. Black and white still works for me today. I love it. Mm-hmm. I don't mind looking at it. There were a couple of colorized TV shows, like the first season of Bewitched. For some reason, it was shot in black and white, but somebody colorized it. Somebody colorized those first season episodes, and they get Elizabeth Montgomery's eyes wrong.
Her eyes are very strange in this episode.
Well, she has green eyes, and I think they're bordering on brown, like brownish green, that kind of a thing.
Oh, like a hazel of some sort.
Yeah, like a hazel. And
her eyes could easily get kind of. She has very, very specific looking eyes. Her eyes are a big part of her look.
Yeah, the eye area, I would say, definitely. That whole area between the eyes, the upper half of the face and the forehead, that's very much a signature for her. What are we looking at here? Is it the end of World War III or something?
I don't think it's anything like that. It's not on our planet,
I do, because it's this. We start with the crane shot, and we're showing New York City, 14th Street and 3rd Avenue, which, it's very strange.
I think it's an alternate reality. It's, the governments don't exist.
But there's also the fact that she speaks Russian.
Yeah.
She says one word. She has one line of dialogue, and it's in Russian. And the way I perceive it, it's like we took our Cold War into the future because of the lasers and all that,
Yeah, I can see that.
But the first time I saw this episode, I was living in a high-rise, 111 3rd Avenue at the corner of 14th Street, and this backlot didn't look anything like that. But
This is a jungle, a monument built by nature honoring disuse, commemorating a few years of nature being left to its own devices. But it's another kind of jungle, the kind that comes in the aftermath of man's battles against himself. Hardly an important battle, not a Gettysburg or a Marne or an Iwo Jima, more like one insignificant corner patch in the crazy quilt of combat. But it was enough to end the existence of this little city. It's been 5 years since a human being walked these streets. This is the first day of the 6th year, as man used to measure time.
I felt like when she did shoot him with the laser, or shot at him with the laser, it was a little bit shocking. It's like, what the hell just happened? I expected a machine gun.
yeah.
There were a couple also weird things. Like, supposedly nobody had been in the area for 5 years, it said. Right?
Yeah, I guess I think Serling says that they're picking up the pieces at some point. Everything is overgrown. Yeah,
but they pick up this food that's been there for 5 years.
Well, canned food. Yeah, he had like some chicken or something.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. And the water in the bucket, wouldn't that have been kind of gone?
Might have been, yeah. But we had to have him shave so he could take his shirt off and have her admire his body. It was kind of like done that way. It was. I think what's going on here, you have Bronson playing one side, Montgomery plays the other, and Bronson's meant to be our side because he speaks English. He behaves with what you would call American mannerisms,
Sure.
Montgomery is, I believe she's Russian because she only uses the one word. She says the word prekrasny, which means beautiful in Russian. She's looking at a dress, and Bronson uses that word at the end to describe her. Very nice ending, actually, too, by the way. So it's pretty grim. There's very little dialogue. It's just Bronson is trying to...
It's only two people in the whole episode, minus Serling.
There it is. And
I enjoyed it. It was simple, but I don't know if I came away... this is such a beloved episode, you said, right? And I looked it up, and everyone's like, oh, this is the best episode. I don't know if I walked away with any type of emotion here.
I wouldn't call it the best. It certainly ranks up there. It's in my top 10, but it's not the best. Not
Why?
yet.
Why is it a top 10?
It's, I guess, because it's so simple. It's just what it is. It's like a courtship between a man and a woman, and they're on opposite sides. She carries a knife everywhere she goes. She follows Bronson around. She starts getting used to him, and then, she gets pissed off and tries to shoot him because she sees all the propaganda posters and everything, and he doesn't know how to deal with her. It's kind of like a man and a woman in a relationship where they don't know whether or not they're going to kill each other or make love.
Right. It's a very heated relationship that they have. And also, in the beginning, he basically wallops her.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah.
Knocks her out.
He's still thinking like this is a war. And then he stops. And then he says, I declare the war over. The war is over.
Right. And he calls peace on for the town. And
Hear ye, hear ye. Know ye by these present that I do hereby declare peace upon the entire world.
You're very pretty now that I see you clearly. But I'm afraid the only way I could convince you of my honorable intentions would be by force. And I'm terribly, terribly sick of fighting.
I enjoyed this particular episode. It was just, I didn't really kind of walk away with much. And I think that's okay with the Twilight Zone sometimes. To just kind of visit, you get a little slice of kind of strangeness, and you walk away. I don't think every episode needs to be, is meant to be picked apart.
Well, I think Serling gets his final narration. He says, "What you've been watching is a love story,"
right?
And it's a great ending. It's a really great ending because she's been looking at this dress, and then he goes and just gives it to her, and it's kind of like an olive branch. And because she puts on this dress, but she's still wearing her combat boots,
and she has the knife,
and she still has the knife.
It's a pretty huge knife too.
They look at each other for a long time, and then she smiles, which is like one of the greatest moments of any Twilight Zone episode. And then he smiles, and then they walk off together. It's just. That's a really great ending. I love that. I love the ability that she doesn't have to say anything. She's so good in this episode. She doesn't need dialogue. We know what she's thinking.
Let me ask you, were there any silent Twilight Zone episodes?
There was The Invaders with Agnes Moorehead. She plays this old woman who is beset by aliens. She has no dialogue whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like living in fear of these little aliens that are trying to kill her, and there's a nice twist that the aliens are actually us.
Gotcha.
She's like a giant. And then there was an episode in the third season that starts with it's filmed as a silent movie with who is it? Buster Keaton, I'm thinking, the silent film actor.
Yeah, Buster Keaton.
And he has a time machine, and he goes into the future, and it's all noisy, and everybody's talking, and there's cars driving by, and he's completely out of his element, and he's frightened. And then he goes back into the past, and everybody's speaking, but it's like a silent movie kind of a thing.
Yeah, I would think that Serling would be a big fan of silent film, because he really does tell stories in a way outside of just the verbal storytelling.
Right. Well,
and this episode falls into that category.
It's that's what I think is so great, is the simplicity of the episode. That's what really got to me, is that we don't even need to have any dialogue in this episode. All we have to do is just look at these actors are so expressive, and and once again it just sort of makes me disappointed that actors today couldn't really. I don't think they could really pull this off.
Not even Johnny Depp?
Not even the great Johnny Depp could pull this off. It's all about a certain kind of way that you express yourself, that you're able to tell a story with using as few words as possible.
Right. It takes a real talent. And these actors really did have that kind of talent, and it showed in the work that they did later in life.
And wonderful chemistry too. They had great
Yeah, I
chemistry
would
together.
never think of these two together.
Yeah, I know.
Ever. And that's really nice to see them together, actually.
So, yeah. It was
So I give this episode a 7.
a 7 on the Jeacoma rating system.
Yeah, and almost nothing ever goes above 8. So
Nothing. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. And I'm wrapping up this second series.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for having me on. I love these episodes. I never know what to say or what to do.
You did a fine job.
I don't care. No, I'm kidding. No, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm going to do my tag, but I got to wait for my child to finish doing what she's doing. And she
Being childish.
I want a drink.
Well, get your damn drink.
This isn't the time for a drink.
She wants a drink.
Kids with their Kool-Aid. These kids with their, what is she drinking, a Rob Roy?
I'm making water.
It's just the water. She's
You can't
making
make
water.
water.
Yes.
Can't
She's
make-
making the water, Miss Daisy. I gotta make the water, Miss Daisy. Go, make friends with the door.
When does your daughter begin school?
There's no door.
Next week. Next
Tuesday?
I don't know if it's. Let me check the old.
Yeah, that's what we have, Tuesday.
No, she starts next Thursday.
Oh, look at her.
1 week. And I have to get her a flash drive. This is because she's going to be taking like classes with computers and everything. So she's going
Nice.
She is really doing. I mean, like I've heard her typing, and she types like a whiz, and she's doing her own coding, and she invented her own games. I'm just like so impressed with her.
That's great, man.
I didn't do a damn thing when I was 9 years old.
Oh, you climb trees and like pick your nose.
Yeah. Excuse me, you made me cough. Okay.
Are we done on the podcast?
No, I got to do my tag.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So I have a tool question I want to ask. It has nothing to do with the podcast.
Okay. Okay. The show will return April 2017 for the third season of Twilight Zone. I want to thank my guests, Bronwyn Knox, Colin Hall, Angela Gang, Alex Saltz, Eve Kerrigan, Nicole Phelps, Craig Beam, and, of course, Mark Jeacoma. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Thank you
I
for
take
listening.
credit for everyone, actually.
Okay.
You
Please
really
remember.
don't actually have to put all those names. You can just put mine.
Yeah, I could, but I always, whenever I wrap up a season, I always,
know, it's nice.
In the words of Rod Serling, any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth, the dignity, the rights of man, that state is obsolete. Good night.